You sit too far away.
What are you talking about? For Christ's sake, it's 3 inches. Not even 3
We
inches.
should be touching.
We should be touching. Yeah, I touch you.
You,
I think that's better.
you're funny.
Tight.
I can't breathe with you leaning against me.
I give you inspiration.
You know? And we'll ask you questions, but it's not formal. We're gonna have like
Yeah,
a
that's
conversation
very
or something
informal.
like that. Very informal.
That's
And
good.
we'll
Very, very informal.
Extremely.
Even 4-letter words are allowed.
No, he doesn't use them generally.
We'll have it as informal as possible.
Generally.
So we are recording on February 6th in anticipation for Valentine's Day.
Oh,
When is Valentine's Day?
This Sunday, this coming Sunday. And how many years will you have been celebrating for?
62nd year. 62.
62 years.
Okay.
Do you remember that, Zaidie? Do you know the dates off by heart?
I know it was 60-something.
But you don't have, do you have a tradition when it comes to Valentine's Day or not as much?
No.
She digs out one of the old cards that we've been exchanging for the last 60 years.
Yeah.
She gives it to me, and I say thank you, and I give it to her, and then she puts it away for next year.
I have to correct. We never exchanged Valentine's Day cards because he always says it was a saint, and we were Jewish and we couldn't celebrate Saint Valentine.
We have anniversary cards.
Not anniversaries, talking about Valentine's.
Oh, I'm sorry. I screwed up.
62 years of Valentine's Day celebrations, roughly. And what is the wisdom that you get from that?
We have to think very hard.
Was it an easy road to get to 62, or were there difficulties?
I think it was easy, generally.
Got a lot of comedy material in there.
It wasn't too bad. There may have been rough
We've been
times.
happily married for 3 years. And 3 out of 62 is not bad.
He forgot the good years. That's the problem.
You got married how many months after you had first met each other?
About 11 months. We met in January and we got married in November.
Of which year?
1958. I was 18 years old at the time.
And I was
24.
4.
You were 24 at the time.
He was 24.
And at what points did you realize that you were ready to take that next step?
I think a week after we met.
Was that the same and reciprocated, Zaidie? You felt the same way?
More or less, yeah.
Were you a weekend you were as comfortable and confident in?
Well,
I think so. In those days, people did get married at much earlier ages than they do now.
right.
Now you in the 30s is
Right.
pretty much normal.
So you're only dating for a very short time.
Well, just
Very,
remember,
very short.
I was in New York. I was in New York visiting for 1 week when I met him. And then after the 1 week, I was home in Toronto. So I used to write letters every single day. And he used to write me every day pretty much too. And we didn't call because it wasn't like, it was expensive to call. Nobody called. It was a long distance relationship. So this was in January. And then he came in February to Toronto for a weekend. And that was the next time I met him.
Yeah.
And on March the 30th, when he came again to Toronto, he brought me an engagement ring.
Wait a minute. Well, you skipped the whole thing. The first date we had, when I picked her up, where she was staying in the Bronx, we went to see the Ice Capades, which was a big thing in those days.
Yeah.
Must have cost me $10 a ticket.
Most of his salary.
I had what they call a cat's eye ring.
Okay.
The cat's eye is a particular
the cut,
stone.
yeah.
I took it off, or she took it off me, and put it on her finger, and it was one of those things, ooh, I can't get it off. So,
Do you remember it the same way?
No,
Bubbie?
no.
so
no.
I think she considered that, and her family considered that, an engagement
No.
after the first date.
Not really. I think he's got the stories a little screwed up. First of all, when I met him, he came to pick me up. And I met him at his sister's house because his sister's husband was my sister's husband's brother. So I was there in Brooklyn. And then he asked me out for Saturday night. That's when we went to the Ice Capades. And it's possible when we were having, we were at the Ice Capades that he had this ring and I put it on. But I don't recall saying that I couldn't take it off, but that's his version of things.
Sorry, and this is
58. All these things are 1958.
Okay.
Then in March the 30th, when he brought me the ring, at that point we were officially engaged. So that was it. And my mother was obviously looking to find a hall, and we wanted to get married in November.
Yeah.
And eventually we got the date, November 22nd. And
were your parents happy that you were settling down? Were both your parents happy, or did they have any reservations?
I think my parents were happy. I don't know about her mom, because she was the only source of income.
More or less, yeah.
For her and her mom and Uncle Zombie.
Right.
Zombie was only about, 17 at the time?
No, I was 18, he was 15.
15.
14 and a half, actually.
So he was still going to school.
So they were a little
it meant that she was going to be leaving, and that would have been that was a problem for her.
She was happy that I had found a nice guy, but she knew that I was planning to move to New York. And in retrospect, I think that was, looking at matters now, I really feel that my mother was very brave, because she never once said, why don't you try to find somebody in Toronto?
Right.
Why do you have to move to New York? Because when I look back, I wouldn't be happy if my kids would do it now, because she was a widow, and that means I was moving out of the house, and it was very difficult, in fact.
Did she have any reservations towards Zaidie, or was it more just the circumstances?
No, just the circumstances.
She loved me.
She liked him, yeah, she liked him, so that was no problem about that. And his parents, I assume they liked me too, because he had previously been dating somebody that was not Jewish, so they must have been thrilled.
Is that true?
I think she must have been the first Jewish girl. This was like a couple of years that I was out of the army.
Right.
And when I was in the army, I went with nobody but non-Jewish girls.
Because there were no Jewish people.
Right.
I even joined a church choir to enable me to meet more girls. And I was such a good singer that the preacher gave me a Bible signed and everything.
Did you have similar political beliefs and religious beliefs when you got together, or was there a lot of growing pains in terms of getting on the same page?
No,
I don't think we ever had any political or religious arguments.
No.
Yeah.
Well,
You just weren't so political, or you saw
we didn't. No, we didn't have. Actually, really didn't get involved into politics until really more so when Trump got in, I think, personally.
Yeah.
But before, we always voted Democrat, so that was our registered denomination. We were registered Democrat.
Yeah.
And as far as religion, that was perfect, because he knew about the Jewish holidays. His parents were, he insisted that when I get married that we keep kosher.
Were there any things which from the beginning was difficult, that you guys had friction over? Was one of you more clean and the other person messy?
No.
Was someone more punctual and the other person later?
No.
Well,
I think he was more punctual than me, I think, although I was always punctual, but maybe I worked to the last moment, and then I never was late. But he liked to, if he had to be someplace at 2 o'clock, at 1:30 he was already there. He was like, the clock was very important to him, which was not to me.
some of the biggest arguments we had was about the cleaning of the house.
Mm-hmm.
She felt she had to impress my mother, who was clean.
Too clean.
She was the type that would wash all the windows
Every week.
once a week.
Right.
No.
And we're talking about 1950,
59, 59, 60, yeah, in New York.
You were a housewife at the time.
Right. So
No, I was working in New York. I
Where were you
worked for
working?
lawyers.
Okay.
I worked right away. Only after Jackie was born. I worked actually to December the 2nd, and Jackie was born on the 3rd. So I worked till Friday, and she was born on Saturday. So,
And was that the last day of work you had for
Yeah.
how long? What was
Yeah.
the next time you worked after that?
after that, permanently, probably maybe 1970.
So
10
about
years.
10 years or so.
Because in between I had 3 kids. But that doesn't mean that I wasn't working at home.
Would you consider that you had a 2-income household? Were both of you working for
Yes, yes, for
Was
sure.
that common during the 1960s, or that was?
To me, it was common.
I think it was starting to become common at that point, especially if you didn't have any children.
Yeah.
Obviously, your wife had a job at the time you got married, and
You split the income.
Yeah.
I mean, everything was
So-
together.
Right.
Truthfully speaking, I had no other. It never occurred to me that what I earned, that I should put it in my account, and he should keep his own account and pay for the things. It never occurred. And then it wasn't until
we've always had joint accounts.
yeah, we always had. I never had a penny extra on my own money,
Yeah.
and he never had any money extra. The thing is that I was really almost flabbergasted to hear, almost 30 years after I was married, that I speak to another friend of mine who was married a year or so later than me. She said, "You kidding? I always had my own account, and if Sid wants to borrow some money, I'll loan him the money." This is how she told me.
At a very
And I-
low interest rate.
and I thought that was amazing. I didn't know anybody would have had such a thing.
Do you ever have money fights or debates over money, or were you both frugal and you had a very strict budget that you lived by?
I would say probably at the beginning I was a little more of a spendthrift, but she trained me well. Getting better and better until I almost strangled. And now I've become as cheap as she is.
That's right. But he's not cheap for himself. I'm cheap for myself. He's not.
Look at the fancy car
No,
I'm
he doesn't.
driving,
No, he-
the fabulous clothes I'm wearing.
No, but those things are not very important to him.
What
He has
is important to me that
everything
I
a
spend
little
so
extra.
much money
You know,
on?
if he likes anything in the way of food or anything, he likes things, what he likes for himself. Certain things he would, more books.
Yeah.
Like he
If I
would.
want to go get a cup of coffee, you're going to spend $1.50 out there. You're going to the house. It's nothing.
Well, because sometimes I go to the thing and I say, I can make the same thing. I'm enjoying my coffee better.
Now I never go out and buy coffee for myself.
So from an early age, you didn't have any friction when it came to politics, when it came to money so much?
But I think now, when I see that he's slow moving, and I didn't realize, I never saw anything wrong with him. Everything that he did was perfect. This was somebody once asked me, many years after I was married already, because I was living in White Zone, and it was in the 70s, and they asked me, I went out with some lady friends, and when I dropped them off, we were talking, and they were saying, complaining about their husband. One complained about the husband was Roberta. She says, "Oh, he's this," and the other one complained about the husband. The next one complained, and then they turned to me and they says, "What about Herb?" And I says, "He's perfect." We had just seen that movie.
Can't lie.
The days we were, the ways we were with Barbara Streisand, and I says, he's just like Robert Redford, but he's a dark version
And he
of.
wears glasses.
How many years into the marriage was this?
10.
No, my kids were already. It was more 58. Let's say it's 20 years probably.
20 years. into
Close to
you sort of
20 years.
had an immaculate
Maybe
record.
like 18 years.
Pitching a
Something
perfect game.
perfect game. Then I started to see some imperfections.
Such as,
Is there anything in the relationship, you got in 10 years, 15 years into the relationship, which was a constant point of friction, of something that you would fight over constantly?
what Was there anything else? I don't think so.
But the problem is that he stops talking. That was a little frustrating for me.
He stops talking in the middle of a fight.
If you
Not in the middle. I wait until she rants on for about an hour to an hour, then I stop. I say, what's the use? If I answer, it's going to be another hour return. If I answer again, there'll be another. So I just
But that's very,
stop
very.
right there.
That's like tormenting a person,
Right.
because if you want to ask a question, he doesn't answer. So it's very
It's funny.
frustrating.
Your communication styles are very different. He's much more introverted.
Yeah.
You are more extroverted.
Yeah.
Right.
I like to
Right.
speak.
Right.
You know, I'm repetitious.
Yeah. For example, when she was working in New York, she would be on the subway, and she would see somebody and suddenly go over and start talking to them. Oh, you're from Brazil? Why don't you come over for dinner tonight?
And this is what.
I said, what's going on? Who is this guy? Where did you meet him? I met him on the subway.
No, I stopped, you know, like I would see people, but this particular guy that he's talking is, my mother had been in Brazil and she had some problem with her luggage, and the airline was Varig, who no longer is in existence, and I had to deal with them. When I was dealing with the Varig, I met this young fellow from Brazil. He had no family or anything, so I asked him if he would like to come over to my house for dinner, especially to meet my husband, because I was so proud of him. And then when I tell him he's coming over, he says, okay, I'm going to the movies. You enjoy yourself. And I says, what are you talking? I'm inviting this guy to meet you, and you're going to the movies? Were you afraid that a stranger came over for dinner?
Because you didn't even ask me or tell me in advance, I'm going to be inviting this guy. Is it all right with you?
But I didn't think I needed that. I thought we were 50-50 or 51 and 49. I gave him 51.
At one point, counts
We
a lot.
always said that he was 51 and I was 49.
Why was that? And when did you
Because a woman was
Because
always a little lower than a man.
Plus the fact that if you have a disagreement
Yeah.
and you're 50-50, there'll never be a decision
when did
made.
you arrive at that percentage of 50? Was that
Right away, I think there was
Because
something.
at that time, I was the one that brought home the, so to speak, bacon.
Right. And has it changed since, or is it still 51-49?
Now it's 51-49.
Did having children change the relationship and the marriage? Did you have the same outlooks on how you would raise children? Did you have the same outlook on disciplining children? Or was there any fights over that?
No, I don't think.
No. We were both pretty, in retrospect, maybe we were too strict.
Yeah.
But that was for what everyone was doing at the time, right?
Everybody was doing.
Right?
If a kid did something wrong, you spanked him. I mean, you didn't abuse him or.
Yeah, but when I look back, although my kids turned out to be pretty good, it bothers me now maybe that I was too strict, because I remember at a year and 2 months, they had to be toilet trained, must be, because, I don't know, we were like strict.
Right. What do you think was the reason why your relationship has been so successful? Why, when we see divorce rates that are so high today, what was so special or what was so different about your relationship?
Well, I think
we're more old-fashioned, I guess.
And what does that mean? More specifically, what does that mean?
Nowadays, if you don't like a particular thing, it could be the most insignificant thing. If you don't agree on it, goodbye, we'll get divorced.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
I'll find another husband, you'll find another wife. And it seems to be the easy thing to do, whereas we come from a generation where you're married, you're married.
Yeah.
You fight, but you're married.
Yeah, I think really is like people are just become too selfish, and they want everything now, and they're not willing to wait.
Were there any close friends of yours that got divorced throughout your relationship?
I don't think so. The husbands died.
Well, if you live long enough, the husbands have died, unfortunately.
It's strange. All our friends What we have, half a dozen close friends.
Yeah.
All the men died. The women are still around.
My immediate friend group, I probably have 3 or 4 friends whose parents have been divorced.
Yeah.
The parents?
Yeah, whose parents have been divorced, and it's something which you don't really see for your generation. You don't hear that story as much of 50% of families.
Yeah, but everything, as I say, you know, if you have a fight, you don't. Nobody seems to be willing to forgive.
Yeah.
You know, I think somebody has to forgive. In my case, it's me. In my case, it's always me. Always.
Are you the more forgiving one?
Yeah, he doesn't forgive.
And I don't forget.
I don't forget either, but I forgive. Isn't it better to forgive him than somebody else? That's the most important person that I have to forgive is him.
Do you see in Zaidie, over the last 60 years, change and growth? Any differences to the man you married 63 years ago, 62 years ago?
Yeah, I think he was more passionate. Yeah, more romantic.
At what point was he very romantic in the first?
Extremely romantic. The first
First night.
few years. First few years. As a matter of fact, I didn't like to be kissed in public, and he liked to kiss people in public. And then I remember he sent me a cutout from the newspaper, you know, like there's nothing wrong with kissing in public or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
Felt over the relationship like it was always strong, like you never had second guesses.
No, I had never second thoughts that I wanted to be out. Never. Maybe he did. I didn't.
And I silent on that.
And I never did, and I always loved him, and I always tell him to this day, this is what I find frustrating, because every day when I go to work, he's still sleeping, and every single day I kiss him, and I say, I love you, you know.
Does he say, I love you a lot?
He?
I don't hear him sleeping.
When you're awake, do you say I love you, or are you more the
No,
he doesn't.
I'm not demonstrative.
No.
He used to be, that's the thing. As the years go by.
After you've been married 30, 40, 50 years, I don't think you're as romantic
No?
as you were during the first couple of years, you know.
Do you still feel as strong in the
Yeah,
relationship?
you've heard about the 7-year itch.
You guys have done a great job. You've done better probably than 95% of marriages. And there's something about...
Well, I think it's because you want to hold it together, because I think that you have to hold it together. You know, it's not for yourself. Sometimes you do it for your kids. I think for your kids, it's very important to have both, you know, two people, and even for each other, it's good to have support to help them. You know, I look at my mother, and it was a very, very hard for her having to raise 3 kids, and she had to be the breadwinner, because when my father died, she had to support us, you know.
Right.
So it was, quite difficult.
Yeah.
But she did it, and she did a good job.
Are there aspects of each other that you guys complement? Like, do you mellow out Zaidie, or does Zaidie make you a stronger person? Are there aspects which the other person helps you build up?
I felt that he was the rock of Gibraltar, right? That's what I thought. I felt that he was the one.
When it comes to driving. She doesn't like to drive at night or in the snow.
Yeah.
But the truth is that I felt because I was 19 and he was 25, and I came from Brazil and he came from New York, and I remember, looking at him and thinking, oh, what a gorgeous looking guy.
And Zaidie, for you, when you looked at Bubbie, were there aspects to her that she helped take out of you?
That's a question for you, not for me.
For you, Zaidie.
I can't answer you.
I wonder if she has any suggestions. She made me more, should I say, thrifty?
Do you think
Financially independent?
But let's say
I didn't have any problems at the time.
having lived and learned for 60 years through a relationship, is there any piece of advice that you would give to young couples, young people today, for making and creating and preserving a good relationship with someone?
Listen to one another. Don't stop talking.
Why, we stopped talking and then we've lasted 62 years.
And Zaidie, for you, is there anything that you would tell?
No,
What would you tell your younger selves?
Be forgiving
Don't
of your spouse. Be forgiving. I think that's the most important thing. If you forgive, so that's very good, because that means you're okay. And I have forgiven him for anything that I felt that he's done wrong.
Right.
Don't pack your suitcase right away.
Yeah.
The things that are important one day become less important each day after.
Yeah.
To a point where you sort of overlook what happened to cause the original argument.
You get a greater perspective of it.
Yeah.
Are there any things that you wish you would have been able to tell your 18-year-old self or 19-year-old self before you got married?
You have to learn by yourself, because you marry somebody and you think that that person is going to be so-so, and they turn out to be quite different, because everybody matures differently. And some people
It'll
by nature.
always be that way, because I find that there are a lot of kids that live together for years and years. They get married, 2 years later they're divorced.
Right.
But yet they could live common law for 5-10 years.
Right.
So what happens when you're married and you have that little piece of paper that you both signed?
Right.
What happens all of a sudden that a couple of years after that you're getting divorced?
What do you think happens? Why is that piece of paper?
I really don't know what the difference is between living common law and being married is, or should be.
Yeah.
Is it more intimate when you're married? I don't know. Do a little research on that.
What is one of your favorite memories from your marriage and your relationship over the last 60 years?
Yes, we have to probably maybe when he survived the heart attack.
Did that give you a new perspective of everything?
Yeah, more or less, yeah. You realize that you're only human, and you are very susceptible to all kinds of things. I just say that, we're blessed that we have 3 wonderful kids, 10 beautiful grandchildren, 1 great grandchild, and I'm lucky that I have lived long enough to see all of that.